You still believe there's a turning point, a moment where everything changes, where you suddenly become disciplined, focused, consistent, like something will just click. And from that point forward, everything will be different. That belief, it's what's keeping you stuck, because it's not real. There is no moment, no sudden shift, no instant transformation. That version of your life doesn't exist. And deep down, you know that. You've been waiting for it for weeks, months, years, and nothing changed. Not permanently. Maybe small bursts, short phases, temporary effort, but you always go back to the same habits, the same mindset, the same version of yourself. That's the pattern, not progress. Reset. You try, you stop, you disappear. You come back and call it starting again. But you're not starting, you're repeating. That's the difference. And repetition builds identity, not intention. So every time you fall back, you're reinforcing something, not failure, familiarity. You're making that version of yourself stronger, more normal, more automatic, until eventually it doesn't feel like a phase anymore. It feels like who you are. That's when it locks in. Not in one moment, through repetition. And right now, you're close to that. Closer than you think. Because you've done this too many times. Tried to change, stopped. Tried again, stopped again. Each cycle makes it harder. Not because change is impossible, because your brain recognizes the pattern. It doesn't believe you anymore. You say, this time it's different, but your actions don't prove it, so nothing sticks. That's why it feels like you're stuck, because you are. Not physically, mentally. Inside a loop you keep repeating. And the more you repeat it, the harder it becomes to break. Because now, you're not just fighting habits, you're fighting identity. And identity resists change. It wants consistency, even if that consistency is keeping you stuck. So it pulls you back every time you try to move forward. Not aggressively, subtly. You feel it, that resistance, that hesitation, that urge to stop. And you listen to it because it feels natural. That's the problem. What feels natural to you is what's keeping you here. Not progress, repetition. So when you think, I'll change soon, what you're really saying is, I'll repeat the cycle again. That's the truth. Because nothing in your behavior has changed, only your intention. And intention doesn't break patterns. Action does. Repeated action. Consistent action. The kind you haven't done. So the outcome doesn't change. It stays the same. And if it stays the same long enough, it becomes permanent. That's where this leads. Not dramatic failure, permanent identity. Where this version of you is no longer temporary. It's fixed. Not because you chose it once, because you repeated it enough. That's how people get stuck for life. Not because they can't change, because they stopped trying in a real way. They accepted the pattern, just like you're starting to. That's the uncomfortable part. You're not far from breaking it, but you're also not far from locking it in. And which one happens depends on what you do next. Not tomorrow, now. Because later is part of the pattern. And every time you say it, you reinforce it. So if nothing changes, this doesn't end the way you think. There's no comeback moment, no final transformation, just repetition until it becomes permanent. And by the time you realize it, it won't matter anymore.